The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
Thank you for joining us on Farm Connections. I'm Dan Hoffman, and I'm pleased to introduce our guest tonight. On my right, Margaret Arica, her husband to her right, Caleb, and to the far right, George Cummins. Margaret, we're going to talk a little bit about Kenya tonight, and you're an expert that can help us with that. You moved here how long ago?
1 year and 8 months.
1 year and 8 months.
Yes.
Tell us about your home in Kenya, and then talk a little bit about your home in Minnesota, please.
Oh, Dan, I have to thank you so much for your invitation to come and talk to you on this program. That's a Farm Connection. We are so grateful and greatly honored. My home is in Kenya. Kenya is one of the countries found in Africa, and that's in East Africa. I come from Nyanza, which is one of the county in Kenya. We live in Kisii. We used to live in Kisii, and then we moved to Nairobi, which is the main city in Kenya. Right now, me and the children, we joined my husband, that's last year, February, and we are living Apple Valley, Minnesota. We like the place despite few challenges here and there. That's weather, which is to extremes, but we like it. Thank you so much, Dan.
Well, thanks for being here. You mentioned 3 children. What are their ages and names, please?
Oh, the first one is 19. She's Susan. Second one is Nathaniel. He's 19. And the third one is Anne Fiona, and she's 9.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Caleb?
Yeah, thank you, Dan. It's a pleasure to be in this show. It was really a great honor for us to be invited to participate in this show and give a little bit about our background and where we are from and see how we can help each other. Perhaps I could correct a little bit. Margaret mentioned our 3 children, and Nathaniel is 17. She said 19, so it's a great pleasure to be here. And as Margaret has said, we are from the Eastern Africa country of Kenya. It's a great pleasure to be in the United States of America, where we came mainly for opportunities, as we'll probably talk about later.
Well, welcome to the show, Farm Connections, but also thanks and welcome to Minnesota. And I'm really impressed with your attentiveness and able to tell her the age of the children. Some husbands just don't get it. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And George, Cummins, a little bit about your background.
I too am honored to be here and meet 2 new Kenyan friends. I have worked in Africa, lived in Africa for 5 years in Tanzania, which is also in East Africa. Was in Nairobi and up along Lake Victoria 45 years ago for a few days, and so it was good to get back and see Africa. Most recently, I've worked with Iowa State University Extension as a crop specialist, and recently retired in January. And had the opportunity in October to go to Kenya for 3 weeks on a volunteer assignment with the Citizens Network for Foreign Affairs and work with a seed company. And it was great to get back and see Africa and work with some of the problems that they've got.
We'll get back to you and we'll talk about some of the trends that you saw in that time period from when you were first there, which was what year?
1964 to 67 in East Africa, and then again 79 to 81.
And then most recently, 2010.
I've had 2 other volunteer assignments, Malawi in 1988 and South Africa in 2003, and then this is my 3rd volunteer assignment in Kenya.
Wonderful, thank you.
One of the best too.
So really happy to hear that.
Caleb, what are some of the challenges of Kenya in agriculture and specifics?
Thank you for that question, Dan. We have a multitude of problems depending on where you are coming from and where you're talking about. Kenya is a country that has the size, land area approximately 2 times the size of Minnesota. But almost 80% of that area is in the drier regions. And Kenya's agricultural production is predominantly dependent on rainfall, some irrigation, but not significant to affect the production in the country. So there are many problems associated with that, especially when you talk about dependence upon rainfall. Most cases, rainfall is erratic in some areas, especially we talk about the semi-arid regions of Kenya, in the eastern and the northern part of Kenya, which is relatively drier. The problems, as I said, are unique for those places. And when I go to places like Western Kenya, where I particularly come from, the Kisii region, those places have got a lot of, there's plenty of rainfall, so they're sufficient for crop production, and actually most places, they grow like 2 crops a year, mostly maize for food crops in that case. But problems associated with those places where we have sufficient water are also many. A few to mention that I can mention is farm inputs, or the production inputs are very expensive. Most of them are imported. There is soil depletion. Fertility has gone down because of overuse. The crops are grown year in, year out, sometimes 2 times in a year. That has lowered fertility significantly, and most places now production is low. We have problems of diseases, which sometimes we do not have chemicals or methods for eliminating this. We have infrastructural problems, communication problems. Like Kisii in particular, we grow tea, and some seasons when it rains heavily, some places it's not possible for vehicles to go and transport their harvested crop to factories for processing. So farmers experience huge losses when what they've been harvesting all day has to be dumped because the transporters are not able to pick the crop. So there are many problems, as I said, and they are unique to distinct areas of Kenya.
Earlier you talked about sometimes there's only 2 rains per growing season, 2 rain events?
Yes, basically. Like I said, in a region around the Western Kenya and Central Kenya, we have a lot of rainfall. They happen 2 seasons in a year, around April and around, it picks up around April and around October. And there is sufficient at that time. But go to eastern and northeastern Kenya, it may or may not come. The seasons are known, but it may not always come.
And you also mentioned sometimes in some regions there's only a 10% chance of having a crop.
Actually, some places it could be even less than that. When we talk about the eastern drier regions, you can go through several years and plant and don't harvest anything. But regions, like I said again, in Western Kenya and central regions where there is enough rainfall, then production is affected by other factors, like maybe seed.
And we're going to ask Margaret in a moment what impact that has on women and families. But for you, Caleb, what impact economically is that?
It's huge because Kenya is mainly dependent upon agriculture for income. When we talk about an individual farm unit and an individual family unit, most of them depend upon what they realize from selling the produce from their farms for any of their expenses, be it school fees for children, medical attention requirements, and of course providing food for the family. So if there is a crop failure, it just may mean absolutely nothing for that family for that season or for that year in many cases.
Thank you. Margaret, what challenges does that bring to the family and to women in Kenya?
Okay, thank you, Dan. As you know, all know, a woman is everything in the society. One person said, empower a woman, and it's like you have empowered 10 women in that village. But coming to Kenya, in most parts of the rural areas, women are not empowered as such. Even if they try, the resources are so limited. Equal distribution of resources is not there anymore. But we thank God that now we have the new constitution. Somehow we hope that resources are going to be distributed equally, and even the woman down there in the village will get what is supposed to get. Because of this, because of poor infrastructure, women are not able to get the right food at the right time that they can give to their children. But if we improve this infrastructure in terms like roads, women are going to get the right food at the right time to feed their children. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Margaret. It sounds like some extreme challenges economically and diet-wise. So we framed the situation and the problem. Now what do we do about it? And maybe that's the time to go to George and then come back. George spent some time there. George, did you see these things that Caleb and Margaret speak of?
Oh, absolutely. I think I'd start with saying that the majority of farmers are rural smallholders. We call them subsistence. And by definition, subsistence is just getting by. In many cases, the food supply is dwindling. It's what they call the hungry months. And it may be weeks or months before the next crop comes in, so they start to ration the food that they have. In some cases, the question that's asked is, if you run out of food or are rationing food, which child are you not going to feed? It's that serious. I was assigned to the Dryland Seed Company. It's a private seed company that is producing and marketing seed corn, sorghum, and the pulses, beans, pigeon pea, cowpeas, and pulses. Their varieties are adapted to the dryland conditions, lower rainfall areas of Kenya and surrounding countries that have similar growing conditions. There's a shortage of quality seed in the system, and my assignment was basically to help Dryland Seed increase productivity so they'd have more seed to sell. And their target audience, their target clientele are the smallholder farmers. They basically package seed in 5-pound bags. That's corn now. There are some commercial farms in Kenya, of course, and the large commercial seed companies that we're familiar with would be targeting them and probably not the smallholder farmer.
Caleb, is it helping? Are these programs helping your people?
Yeah, really thank George and others like him who are going out there and providing help to our people where it's really needed in most cases. We have some of the problems you were asking me about, Dan, of the especially poor production is directly related to the incorrect seed being planted in correct places, if I could call it that. There are places like Eastern Kenya where we have the very short rains, where we need, for example, maize being the main food crop. We need the variety which can do very well in a short time. Like, there's one variety I could think of was a Katumani, which is a 3-month maturing maize crop from planting to harvest time. And others like George was showing me, which are even 75 days, that's less than 3 months to mature. So those ones will be able to really help in ensuring food or continue to sustain food production in the area. Sorry.
Thanks, Caleb. You didn't mention during your bio or introduction, you're trained at the University of Minnesota in soil science. So I think that gives credibility to your comments. In Kenya, with the 75-day variety, or maybe the 120 that George spoke of before the show, what kind of yield can we get in bushels or pounds?
You get me there, Dan. I could say in an acre, in the short variety, in the drier regions, you will be lucky in a good year to get, we normally count in sacks, about 1090 kilogram sacks. That's 10 200-pound sacks
200
from an acre.
For 1 hectare or 1 acre?
1 acre.
Ton an acre.
That's a good year.
We're talking well, 30 to 40 bushel for some of the open pollinated varieties, which are improved open pollinated, and then hybrids can get up to 80 and 90 rain fed. A lot of that depends on the fertility and the management, and a lot of the management is done by hand, and simple things like planting accuracy, planting depth, populations, and so on can improve yields dramatically. And a lot of the work that our contract growers work with dryland seed, all of the work is done by hand. The planting, the weeding, the harvesting, the shelling, and so on. And I guess one of the things that, as an observer, we have a lot of technology that's years old in this country that would make women's life easier in Kenya. I think Mark would agree with that.
I think you brought one to the studio.
Yeah, we got a couple. Margaret's going to steal this from me, but the seed corn that was being grown is hand-shelled by women, and their thumbs get worn out before they get through very many acres. This is a cone sheller. They're about $4.50, and this is what I take along for gifts to give to people, and this is going to be Margaret's mother's Christmas present back in Kenya.
Thank you so much, George.
And she's going to thank you for it.
And it looks like it's lifelong. It doesn't break down.
It'll work. It'll work.
It's aluminum alloy, perhaps.
Yes.
And easy to. There's shops in Kenya that could make those very easily. The idea.
Sure.
Another idea, and one of the biggest problems that I noticed in the seed production was, again, planting depth, planting spacing. It's done with a machete. And this is a plot planter made by Almaco in Nevada, Iowa. And I used to use it for planting plots, variety plots. My students use them and so on. If you've got the rows marked, you can plant about an acre in 8 hours by yourself. Our largest contract grower, our dryland's largest contract grower, was 75 acres. And it's planted by women by hand with a machete. And this is seed corn, and plant depth is critical. Plant emergence is critical. Plant population is critical. Mm-hmm. This is all certified seed, and it has to be pollinated, the timing of the tassels and the silks and so on. And this tool would allow you to plant at the right depth, at the right spacing. We've got marks on here so you can pull a string and get your row spacing accurately. And it was certainly improve the planting efficiency of the women, give them more time to cook and take care of kids and maybe even relax.
Exactly.
George, how much would this cost if I had to send some of this to Kenya?
The Almaco, I think these are about $200. They're fairly expensive, but you could make something like that much less expensively in Kenya if you observe patents and that sort of thing. There are several different designs of this. I use this in my own garden to plant my sweet corn. So it's these are about $4.50.
Yes.
And the exchange rate right now, I think, was about 80 shillings to $1. So it seems relatively expensive here, but if you could manufacture them there, and there's machine shops in Kenya that could make something very similar for much less.
George, I watched when you gave the corn sheller to Margaret, and you could tell it was an appreciated gift, and she saw the value in it. Her eyes lit up, and she saw Mom saving time with it. So, and noticing the simple planter, Caleb, you seem impressed with it.
I actually am impressed. I saw George demonstrating how to use it and how fast it can be. As an agricultural trained person, I can see its application in some regions of Kenya, if I may say so.
Sure.
I know there could be challenges, like initially you need the proper preparation of the land. The initial tillage has to be properly done. But the seed planting, like you said, is so critical. Planting at the right depth, at the right spacing, so that you get the right population, the right environment for even pollination. It's so important that the value of this could be really very high.
Well, we've been very fortunate in Minnesota and Iowa with extension agents and farm business management instructors and others that help transfer that technology, help transfer that information. How is that done in your country?
Transfer of technology, especially new technology, we do have one thing I may call appropriate technology transfer in Kenya. Most of it has been done to date by the government agencies. Especially in agriculture, we have the extension section where we'll have demonstrations when we have new ideas. So people are invited to centers where they'll be appraised on the applications of the new technologies which are there. Something like this which comes from abroad, I can't imagine how it will be done besides using the same methods. There are also groups and non-government organizations which can come in to help a lot in providing the education to transfer that technology to the users.
Thank you. Margaret, how about the home and for nutrition and diet? Is there an institution or organization to help the gals with that?
Oh yeah, they're trying as much as they could, but still the problem we have is money. They don't have enough funds to get more expertise to go and assist these people, mostly in the rural areas. You find like in Kenya, best doctors, they're all heaped in one town, more especially they are in Nairobi. So they try to help people in Nairobi city. Where else you find most smaller towns or interior places, they have less doctors to attend to their diseases. So you still find that the common human being outside there is still suffering from the diseases. So they are not able to go to their farms and dig, to get something to eat, simply because of diseases. And again, we come for a machine like this one that George has showed us. Okay, it looks a good machine, and it's going to ease the work of a woman, not to bend so much. But still, the problem is money. It's talking like it's $200 per a piece. Go to Kenya, the actual salary of a common person in a month, not 2 weeks, in a month, is actually $200. Tell me, is a Kenyan going to afford a machine of $200? No. So still we shall be using the I don't know how I can put it, the low quality of farming, which will yield still low quality food. So the problem still remains unless there's a revolution, an overhaul of everything, that these things are taken by experts like George here, back their home. They show our people. We have some sectors we call kari, that's jua kali, where there are people who make these things in a cheaper way. They are shown on what to do. They make them cheaply so that a common person can afford and use it.
Thank you, Margaret. George, you were just there, and you said you were well received. Tell us about that process. How did you help?
I had 18 days in country, and 5 of the days I spent with the managing director and their 2 production agronomists traveling to contract growers. We had maize growing in just coming up to ready for harvest, different stages. We analyzed each of the growers as far as their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and so on, trying to see if we wanted to keep them as growers, if they were, if we need to find other growers, and so on. We set out some demonstration plots. Again, Dryland is trying to start marketing in more parts of Kenya, so we found some local farmers that were willing to plant a small demonstration plot. They'll put a sign, dryland seed, in front of it, acquaint people with improved seed and what it can be done. We spent some time with, it's the Kenyan Horticulture Competitiveness Project. It's a USAID government-sponsored, U.S. government project that is trying to improve pulse production. Again, the legumes, the beans, the peas, and so on, that Dryland is providing the seed for the project. We met with all of the non-government agencies, groups that are working with that project that want it to succeed, and we're trying to coordinate efforts, and this is a problem that I think will be brought up also. And then one of the things I enjoyed most was we met with 134 farmers who were a pilot group for this Kenyan horticulture project, and kicked off the planting and so on. People ask me, how does Kenyan agriculture and Iowa agriculture different, and what can you tell them, what could I provide, and so on. And you were trained as an ag teacher in trained in problem solution. And the problems in Kenya and the problems in Iowa are the same. It's the answers are a little bit different. And I was trained to never answer a question directly that a student asked me or a client asked me. I would ask them another question and work them through so that they learned how to solve their problems. You have a problem, you identify it, you identify the resources you have to correct it, and then come up with some options of how to do it with what you got. I think this is critical. That's a very, very useful tool, because I'm there for 3 weeks. I'm going to blow in, blow off, and blow out. And a lot of these projects that start with good intentions, once the funding dries up, the contract is finished, the people leave, and people have not got ownership, they've not adopted the practice, and it wilts.
George, thank you so much. And I think you noticed a big trend difference when you were there this last time, much improvement, but we're just about out of time. So thanks again for joining us. And if the audience has any questions, they can send to the website, and they'll get in contact with you, either George, Margaret, or Caleb. For more information, log on to ksmq.org and click on Farm Connections. There you can find email addresses, past episodes, and participate in the blogs. Thanks for joining us, and don't forget to email us at ksmq.org. And from Farm Connections, thanks for joining us.